It's Friday, July 26, 2019, and this is the Pro and the Con Show, and I am your host, Michael James Ott. Welcome once again to the show, 15 to 20 minutes, nearly every day. Try to do it every single day, encourage, put these words out there, encourage people to open their hearts and their minds to at least acknowledging and listening to opposing views, and really, even more so, strongly encouraging people to just grab hold of the facts, the who, the what, the where, and the when, which is, that's the news, folks. Just those facts. And then based on just the news, determining, your own opinion about, what you think might happen, or the meaning of it, or whatever, instead of listening to one of the information sources. And again, I carefully use that term. I say information and not news, because so many of the streams of information that you can receive is not the news, and it's not unbiased. In fact, it's provided to try to sway you into doing things that some other person wants you to do, and many times is not in your best interest. So today, we go through websites because it's easier than trying to do it with live television or something like that, cable channels or whatever. So on the right, the rightmost leaning is Breitbart, and then second rightmost leaning or conservative leaning is Fox News, and then NPR, National Public Radio, generally fairly unbiased, fairly middle of the road, then CNN left, and then Huffington Post being the leftmost. And so let's and it's interesting. So today I want to just point out, and I've encouraged you many times, I will, many days in the future, to look at the different streams of information and compare them. Because many times what you will see is that certain streams of information or certain streams are giving you certain information, and that isn't even appearing on the other streams of information. And it really points to, the bias in these things. And a way to get rid of bias, one way is to take some extra moments. And I'm not talking about weeks or months, but yes, minutes and maybe a few hours a month to be a better citizen, to look at these different streams of information and at least acknowledge that one of maybe the stream of information that most aligns with your general beliefs isn't giving you the whole story, because they're not. I'll be just absolutely frank with you. They're not. So if you want to be a good citizen, if you really want to bring this country together and have a step change, I think, in how well we work together to go forward, then you really need to spend the extra time to understand the complexities of these issues, and not just from one viewpoint, but from multiple viewpoints. And then based on the amalgam of all that, okay, what is a fair and reasonable way to go forward on some of these issues, recognizing that, for example, I have my opinions about some of these things. Well, the way that the policies and laws may unfold, I'm not going to get 100% of what I want, but I shouldn't have that expectation. There's 340 people in this country, for crying out loud, okay? And, you're not even going to get that kind of collaboration and agreement in your own family of, 3, 4, 5 people or whatever. So come on. Let's have a little bit of reality here, a little bit of reality, all right? and try to do this together going forward. So looking at the Huffington Post, earlier this week, Mr. Mueller was on television for, I guess, close to 7 hours. Well, now the Huffington Post has this as their main story: House Dems tiptoe toward impeachment. Mr. Nadler is actually subpoenaing, hard word for me to say, subpoenaing some information, the background information, Department of Justice information behind the Mueller report. Claims that they need that in order to understand whether there's really grounds for an impeachment inquiry. Okay. Now the second main, and again, you can tell that the Huffington Post is definitely left-leaning, right? So look at that second main headline: a tale of two buffoons, male privilege laid bare. Okay, and he's talking about the new guy, the new British Prime Minister, Johnson, I think is his last name, and of course our own Donald Trump. And then the last thing that they're, because the Democrats in Congress are trying to get hold of Mr. Trump's tax returns, and the head of his department, which he controls, is saying no, and he's saying there's no precedent. Well, then the Democrats are pointing out that Mr. Nixon, back in the 70s, they were pretty sure that he had been cheating on his taxes, and so they got and received previous tax years. Congress did that, and they did indeed audit. And in fact, the IRS, once this started snowballing, the IRS got involved, and they did these parallel audits. And yes, indeed, Mr. Nixon actually owed something around about something close to $500,000 in back taxes because he had been sneaking around on the tax laws. Then CNN, one of their top stories is just making sure you claim your Equifax money. So Equifax had this huge data breach, and there's a class action suit that was settled, and you have to apply for your $100, $200 kind of thing. Otherwise, you may miss out. But right in the middle of this is really the main headline is the 23 most over-the-top headlines from Trump's phone interview with Sean Hannity. So Mr. Hannity, of course, is a Fox News broadcaster, anchor, I guess. And of course, Fox News is one of the information streams that's, conservative, right-leaning, and generally supporting of Trump. Although they have started to earn the ire of Mr. Trump, because here recently they've been reporting some polling numbers that say that Mr. Trump is behind, theoretically behind Mr. Biden by 10 points or more nationally if the election were held today. And of course, Mr. Trump doesn't like that. Doesn't like any time anyone publishes anything or says anything where he isn't number one, top dog, fantastic in every possible way. Basically God incarnate. But anyway, so that's CNN. That's Mr. Trump being Mr. Trump. So those of you that are Trump supporters, you like that apparently. So he is that. He is this brash, narcissistic, uncaring guy, and that's what he is. So I guess some of us like that, and that's fine. But anyway, so if you read that article, it's really actually quite weak. It just lists these things, and then somebody giving these little comments like, oh, really? Why it should even be allowed to be published, I don't know. Then we go to NPR and we actually get some news. Not so. The number one thing here is what we know is 16 Marines were arrested after alleged human smuggling. So as some 800 Marines gathered in formation at Camp Pendleton in California, 16 people were pulled out and put under arrest. Wow. So as I was going through these different websites, this is the only one that has this story, amazingly enough. So there you go. But that to me, and one of the reasons why I say that NPR generally is less biased is they are much more prone to just report, the news. They just say, okay, here's the headline, this is what happened, and it just says here, 16 Marines arrested for alleged human smuggling. And where? Camp Pendleton, California. Okay? And there's not any of this, exclamation points and capital letters and underlines like Huffington Post. Again, you go back to this graphic on Huffington Post, and you see that they're trying strongly to incite emotion in anybody reading this, either their normal audience or the audience that might be opposed to that kind of thing. Then let's see here. Let's just look at Fox News. Oh yeah, so their top story is a Fox News exclusive. Griff Jenkins goes inside an ICE detention facility and finds a shocking reality. So what this story is about is, and again, shocking. So these words, it's like, again, they're intended to incite emotion and to cause people to, get energized in these kinds of things. But I've already covered this in the past. The reality is behind, and after reviewing multiple articles on the conditions in these detention centers across the border area, that there's a huge variation in these detention centers. And some of them, again, and it's also a big influence on the conditions at the moment, is how big is the problem with some of the people trying to come across the border at that moment in time. It's no different than you go to a restaurant and then suddenly a bus or bus loads of kids come into the same restaurant. Well, suddenly, of course, the level of service and cleanliness and everything rapidly degrades because the staff, who is normally used to 20 customers an hour, has now been inundated with 150 customers in 20 minutes. Okay, well, this same sort of thing happens with these detention centers. And so what's happened here is that one of the detention centers that had been toured by some of the Democrats some weeks ago and led to charges of inhumane treatment and cleanliness and so on, now weeks later they were invited, Fox News was invited to come and look. Okay, well, so a couple things. It's a different day. And then, like I said, when I found before, these places, they have a lot of variation in how they deal with this and how well they deal with it, even on uniformly and like day after day, and then when there's big influxes. But one of the other things that is obvious, is, and one of the reasons, so go back to the restaurant analogy. So those cleanliness ratings that restaurants have, those are done based on random inspections. In other words, the restaurant is not, no one calls the restaurant like a week in advance and says, you know what, we're going to come in and we're going to inspect you on Thursday, so you better be ready. Well, this place, and it may be that when there isn't a huge influx, it might perform well, but it might also be that they, knew that they were in a position where they could get things cleaned up and in a good way, and then bring in this team from Fox News to witness this so-called shocking reality that things are actually okay within this facility. Then go to Breitbart, which is one of the right-leaning conservative ones. And here's a case where they've done this article, and it was one of the lead headlines on Breitbart. So I'll go ahead and flip this over so you can read that. What it says is, none of Hollywood's top 100 power players have donated to a Republican candidate. And you read this article, and it talks about, they list some of the most well-known celebrities in Hollywood, and they list some of the donations that they've been giving, at least so far. And, if it's to be believed, if it's accurate reporting, then the celebrities so far have been giving to, Democratic candidates. But the reality is that all of the candidates receive donations from these various sources, and they can be very significant donations. And so I don't care whether you're right-leaning or left-leaning or whatever, there's always going to be, and this is where I get into the, all about the political parties and this puppeteering thing and the wealth and the richness of some of these people, and frankly, it's just this power play, and it's why the country is so badly divided, because these people over here have a certain agenda, and these people over here had a certain agenda, and guess what? They're on both sides. They're wealthy and influential people, and they want their agenda, and they don't give a damn about the number, the people in between that they're treading on. That's you and me. And for as long as we allow this to occur, that's why we're going to have, we continue to have problems. And it all comes from, I use this term, those who would be king. So these people over here, wealthy, powerful individuals, these people over here, wealthy, powerful individuals, they all would want to be king. And then what do? They groom candidates to rise up through their party, and then we get choices. Okay, we get choices of these people who would be king, and that's what we have, and we need to get rid of it. But anyway, let me go back to this article. So, an unbiased way of doing this would have been just to say, okay, here's all, and actually there's other websites. I'm trying to remember the name of one of them, but there are other websites where they just list all the donations by all people, all rich people, and who they're donating to. Are they donating to, and the list is a lengthy one, and the dollars are huge, obviously billions of dollars each year. But that is, that's true unbiased reporting is, here, through from January to today, according to the Federal Election Commission, here's all of these donors and all the money that has gone to all the different congressmen and senators and political action committees and on and on and on. Here's all the money, and here's where it's come from. These people, here's the names. And yes, a bunch of them would be Hollywood actors and directors and so on, and a bunch of them would be captains of industry, in whatever, chemical industry, pharmaceuticals, and so on. Well, we're running out of time, but again, strongly encourage you to focus on the who, the what, the where, the when. Strongly encourage you to look at multiple sources of information so that you can help yourself ferret out the bias in what's coming to you, and then imploring all of us to do a much better job being good citizens, to spend the extra time to try to understand and try to appreciate the viewpoints from those opposed to us, because the truth is, it's a matter of perspective here on several of these things, and the truth is complex. So need to at least open our minds to what the other folks are saying, and then try to come to some reasonable place in the middle where we can all move forward in a way that's good for the vast majority of us. All right, so my name is Michael James Ott. This has been the Pro and Con Show. Thanks for watching. Another show tomorrow, 15 to 20 minutes, almost every day. Until then, bye for now.